Welcome to the Freo Doctor Uncensored, with me, your host Maria Vusic, where unedited conversations ride on the cleansing breeze of the Freo Doctor. In episode 8, we are back with Fremantle ratepayers Helen Cox, John Dowson, Mark Woodcock, Elisabeth Megrov and Craig Ross to delve into the questions and issues that Council does not want to see the light of day, and certainly not in any robust engagement.
We're still on the annual electors meeting questions. Now, we've heard some really good stuff from Craig. Now, Elisabeth, how did you go with your questions?
I actually didn't ask any questions for a change, but I seconded 2 motions, yours and Peter Patzak's. In relation to the question, I've got to make a comment, because when you look at the minutes, it's misleading because it appears that they've answered the questions on the night. They answered very few questions, or rather responded to the questions, very few of them, but in the minutes they appear as if they had all been responded to on the night. Completely misleading.
So quite a bit of smokes and mirrors.
On block.
It is...
And then also the subsequent confirmation of what happened at the next ordinary council meeting.
Well, according to the Act, it says all decisions need to be considered at the next ordinary council meeting. If it's not practical, then on the following one. So on the next council meeting, there was not even mentioned when these motions and questions would be considered. Instead, we had to listen to Mayor Fitzharding acknowledging the ex-CEO of the recovery centre, the recovery centre, stepping back. Group. Yes, and now she is being the acting CEO. And then also a side comment about what a wonderful job the chair councillor at...
Which council? Was it Councillor Doug Thompson?
Yes, doing. And Councillor Thompson piped up and said, well, make sure that this is minuted. Yet the important things,
but can we just stop that there for 1 minute? I think this really deserves a little bit of unpacking. And that is the resource recovery is losing money.
Yes.
No, it's not losing money. It's going to be closed up. It's going to go bust.
Yeah, so there's So based on the information that's available, there is a going concern issue. All the councils that were contributing and part of that agreement have all now withdrawn.
So this is, just for the listeners, this is the resource recovery. It's like a business that was set up maybe 20 years ago by 6, 7, 8 councils. And this is where we were going to recycle our green waste, we were going to recycle the plastics, and we were going to be green, and get better every year with that.
Paid for by ratepayers.
Okay, and it was paid for by ratepayers exclusively. There was a premises up in Canning Vale, and over the years, it's always cost us money. So we're continually losing money. So the City of Canning pulled out, City of Melville pulled out, it looks like now East Fremantle pulled out. We're going to be left holding the bag. So the chair of this organisation presided over an organisation, and mind you, $30,000 a year is an extra fee you get to be the chair.
That's right. So as sitting as on the effectively as the councillor or on the board of Resource Recovery Group, you get paid $30,000.
$30,000 per year
for one meeting a month.
Well, yes, one
and a few. Yeah. I'm sure there's a few emails and things to read. I'm sure there's a few trips in it as well, so you can go and look at someone else's recovery system that actually works.
Yes. Yeah. So there was a $3 million loss in the FY23 financial report, but you won't find any discussion or analysis variance against budget, and any deliberations around Resource Recovery Group are considered confidential.
So in actual fact, that $3 million it's a hit we've taken, but we ain't paying any attention to...
And another 2 million coming for this next year.
Yes. So those figures are nowhere to be found.
You will have no analysis that's open to the public on that.
Yeah. So, but they're big losses on top of the losses of Civic Centre. But what I find extraordinary is that Mayor Fitzharding has taken over the chairship, yes?
The
Well,
acting,
Yes.
she's believed the acting...
Yeah.
No, not the acting CEO.
she's the-
CEO.
She's the acting CEO.
I think it's chairperson.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's chairperson.
No,
Chairperson.
because
She
Doug
mentioned
Thompson...
CEO.
Doug Thompson stepped back from his role, so we were informed on the most recent meeting that he now stepped back
So you've
from
got-
his chairship. So I don't know who replaces
Okay,
him, what's
CEO,
going
chairship,
on.
it's the head honcho of the organisation. You know what I find, I guess it's a bit of black comedy, is you've got Mayor Fitzharding taking over an organisation that's been failing for 20
But
years.
she's been there all the time
Yeah.
in some
capacity. Her role is to oversee, to make sure the organisation is doing well, and for that, if it isn't doing well, is to be able to report in a transparent manner to the council and to the ratepayers. So she's getting paid from the ratepayers to support a failing business so that she can go off into council and congratulate the previous councillor who presided over
On
it
failure.
on the failure, and she's rather proud that she's now
And
the
the
acting CEO of the failure.
So, but the other thing is that it's not just, say, okay, obviously there was one councillor who's been there for, I believe, for many years. So that's a nice little wallet filler going to that one every month. But the other thing is there's also an audit and risk committee.
Yeah.
Now, their job is to look at the financial activities of the city and then look into the risk and look into the financial management. Where is their reports to say that this place was in such dire situation? Why didn't they write off, when the Auditor General has already told them that they're going to close it up this year, why didn't they just write it off last year? Why are they dragging it out? Or are they just trying to think that 3 million plus 2 million won't look as bad as 5+ million?
Why do you think they're dragging it out?
Oh, because it just the optics of writing off $5 million in 1 year is considered a bad look, and questions will be asked, and the council doesn't want
Questions are going to be asked, because that was something that, so while we're talking about questions, we also had motions at the night, and the motion I put forward, because I've learnt asking council to do anything at an electors meeting is a waste of time, because they never do, they don't even consider your questions. So my motion this year, which was I think pretty much with the exception of one or two, was voted for unanimously, and that was that the electors write to the Auditor General and then we ask for a proper investigation into this. So A, we know what happened, but two, hopefully someone from council will learn what to do next time, because no matter what happens, we still need to have our rubbish collected. It still needs to go somewhere,
Of course.
and we have to pay money for it.
Of
But all
course.
we've got so far now is the last 2 years a $5 million loss, a business that's going to close down. It doesn't seem to have any tangible assets to sell, and we don't have a public plan of what happens to our rubbish after that. And that's one of the fundamental jobs of council. So with all the other stuff they get up to, they've failed at their most fundamental task.
And
you've got
the response given in the questions to the motions was no further action required, and if this group wants to generate their own little group, they can do it themselves.
Okay.
That was the
we'll
council's
take them up on
response.
that.
Well,
We'll take them up on that.
we will be taking that forward.
But I think Elisabeth's point, which you probably haven't included at the moment, is that Elisabeth identified that why is an officer responding when those questions should have gone to council, when those motions should have gone to council, but now we're getting responses to our motions in a table saying that the officer has recommended. So there was no council or council debate about those motions.
You mean the elected members
Yes,
have not considered the motions and questions and
Yes.
took a vote on it?
that's right. It was a recommendation from a council officer. Well, that's not the remit
Some
of
of-
an
and there
electors
is
meeting.
the receival of the annual report
That's not
that was
lawful.
lost, was simply not even commented on.
Yeah.
That was the 4th year in a row.
4th year in a
Yes.
row,
Yeah.
that's right.
And really,
And-
the fundamentals of what not accepting that report. You would expect that if you're doing the finances, if you were in a board, a proper, a company, and you had a board, and you came in with that financial report, someone would lose their job. You'd be laughed at.
Yes,
Definitely.
You talk about the previous year. You should be reporting on this year. Sure, it might have been a mistake, but it's a big mistake. You're 12 months out. Unacceptable. There are so many other inaccuracies going through. Civic Centre still reporting on 43 million.
Well,
Unacceptable.
fiduciary duty has been an issue since at least 2012.
Yeah,
Really,
okay.
because we were involved in presenting questions about finances. So it's
For a while,
it's an established culture
Okay.
there now.
Okay.
And-
Elizabeth, finishing off on your
yes.
point. Sorry.
I stayed until after 9 o'clock to hear what their deliberations were on our motions and questions. And it was just tagged on at the end of an en bloc voting and as number 19. It was not even mentioned by name. The paper was not even up. It just disappeared into the night. And by the time you realised, number 19, our motions, the evening was
En
over.
bloc.
But en bloc, and tagged on en bloc.
Yeah.
And the mayor said that includes 19.
All the
People
motions.
supposed to be knowing what number 19 is.
Correct. But you know something, we can put little hashtags on various things on social media, and for me what I see of that particular exercise of the elected members, they have to do it. But it's a tick box that they're doing. So everything that I saw in terms of the responses, the way that the officers responded and made a comment about it, it's a tick box
It's
council.
not transparent though.
It's just, but it's a tick box.
And
It,
it is, we are shut out all the time, and it's disrespectful, and we dismiss, all these people who came up and asked the question, they gave up their free time to participate in democracy, and you're dismissed, you're a nuisance. And again that night, the first part of the visual live stream didn't work. Not just the visual, the sound didn't
recording
work
as well.
either.
That's
We
because
lose
it
it.
was
So that's-
question time.
Question time.
Yeah, but they don't want
we
those questions on record.
Shut out again.
They don't want those questions on record. And also the video's running. They don't want it on record, some of the things that people were going to ask, because they knew it was going to be rough.
But that
So
is
they
now-
make you talk into a microphone and stand in front of the camera. That's not working. Is that?
That's
It's
now
really
part
awful.
of the local government legislation now, that it needs to be recorded and live streamed. That's included in the amendments.
The reform.
Well,
In the
For
reform.
every person
So
who
they
makes
are-
the effort to come up there, you
That's
just
negligent.
but maybe
dismiss.
being a tick box council, one of the strategies is if you don't end up showing up, we give you such a bad experience that you don't show up. That's what we want. We want, because actually when you have a look at a brand new building, it's supposed to be the people's building,
Yes.
and you find out how many people can fit in the chamber.
30.
30? I mean, really? It's not our building, really.
Perhaps the technician who can't get this to work should be sacked.
I'm probably following instructions.
Okay, are we going to move on
Yep.
to Mark, your questions on the night?
All right, so I asked a few questions, and not to go into all of them, but I think the first one, which is why I went back to council 2 weeks later, or meeting later, to ask the same question again and to point out their response to the question. So my question was, and I'll read it off the minutes as it's recorded: what is the latest cost of the King Square project? I didn't mention building, I said project for the entire lot. So I asked that question and this is a point I made to council the other night. I asked this question on the 5th of February in 2024. Council's response to what the total, the latest cost for King Square is, A full breakdown of costs associated with Wallyup Civic Centre project is publicly available in the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 24th of August 2022. So we know the building is still not finished. I've gone in February 24 to ask what the total cost is, and they refer me to a meeting a year and a half earlier. And we already know that they spent millions in 2023. So just the fact that they even put that answer in, and then when I asked questions, what is the latest cost? How much more is it to be completed? All they did was refer to the answer from my question number 1. So for when it's due to be completed or what's got to get done, they referred me back to August 2022.
But have you noticed that the mayor, none of the elected members, even the CEO, cannot say 65 million and counting? They can't say that, because as soon as you say that, you know
You're accountable.
and you've overspent by 20 million as a minimum and counting. I just find that it is just unacceptable. How will you improve if you're not honest? I think the ratepayers deserve a level of honesty, and I think that the ratepayers are forgiving. You made a mistake. It was a big one. You put all of your eggs in the one basket, and you still will not be respectful to them, who will be paying for all of this, by saying total project cost audited was 63. It's been 2 years now, it's 65. In another 2 years, we'll probably 67, because we know that loan of 20 million is 1.2 every year. So there's $200,000 increase in just the interest on that 20 million. So we know that given another 2 or 3 years, it will be 70 million.
However, I understand the statement, but in actual fact, people who are paying their rates are very busy going to work, earning the money to pay their rates. And so, in terms of finances, they haven't got the time to follow the council, who are entrusted to take care of our rates, our revenue. So, my concern is that, people are working hard to pay their rates. However, the people who are managing our revenue and expenditures are really
mismanaging.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's such a huge opportunity cost due to that civic centre. So you've sold off all those income-producing assets, the car park. So you're losing $5 million a year simply from car park revenue.
They don't know. The average the average person out there working does not have the time to actually follow this. They are supposed to be
That's
doing
okay,
that.
Helen. We'll keep them informed. Okay, let's keep moving around the table. Helen, I'm going to introduce John Dowson. John Dowson has joined us, and he will be speaking, because he's such a great expert on heritage. We have an issue on the sale of Victoria Hall, and also we've had an incident in relation to the fig tree on High Street and its impact on the Castellini property. And also the machinations with council and the mayor and all of that. I think it's really important to bring that to the fore. But before we actually go into that issue, can we just finish off with yourself, Helen, in terms of questions? Did you want to say anything more on that?
Well, my question was to Mayor Fitzharding, not Mayor Hannah, as she likes to be known, Mayor Fitzharding, about her pledge to the Fremantle residents and ratepayers that council, and she was going to oversee that amenities and services within the city would be attended to, especially maintenance of roads, cleaning of streets. And I specifically asked what new practices were implemented, what was implemented to ensure that the streets were maintained, that the buildings were maintained, and services were restored to their previous level of accessibility and serviceability. So, and the response that I received was the general response: no further action is required because the council policies and practices are being carried out on a specific routine basis. But I asked specifically what new practices and policies were introduced to ensure that her pledge was carried out, and
what was the response?
nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
So I did make a comment after you spoke. I did make a comment on that, and I walked up Colley Street to get to the meeting for that night.
Yeah.
And I've been up and down, I suppose, Colley Street, and the amount of build-up of rubbish. It's not like it's cigarette butts and paper cups. There's soiled underwear on the street, ripped up backpacks, shoes, articles of clothing, other things that you didn't really want to dare touch or even kick over to see what was underneath it.
It's a health issue.
The street was an utter disgrace. But I have to say, what I found very amusing afterwards is when I walked back down Colley Street, because we all went and had a beer.
Yes.
And I went back down Colley Street, someone had been there and cleaned it. So from the time I made my comment to the time I walked back a few hours later, someone has actually cleaned it, and even cleaned in where the rubbish bins were and some of those places where there's like little parking areas and stuff. And I was really surprised that they were that embarrassed. And I'm sorry I didn't get pictures, because the street was an utter disgrace.
Well, you can go down there any other time, and there are plenty of...
Just give it a bit of time to build
evidence.
up.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to need to move on now. We're going to come to our last item, and that is on sale of 179 High Street, which is Victoria Hall. And as I said earlier about Victory and the Catalini family. Introducing once again John Dowson. John is president of the Fremantle Society. We've got your book up here, Fighting for Fremantle. I recommend everybody to get a copy of it. It was written to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Fremantle Society. It's riveting reading, actually, really riveting reading. I took it away for the Christmas holidays thinking I'll flick through this, end up reading it twice, simply because you can recognise the streets. You, although I didn't know many of the central figures in that early fight, just how extraordinary was their courage to stop the heritage being demolished. And it was due to be demolished in a very big way. So, John, can you please start with the sale of Victoria Hall?
Well, it's a bit of a shock to hear that council wants to sell it. And of course, they did try to sell it a couple of years ago, but nobody wanted to put up the right sort of money. And it is an utter disgrace, because basically, instead of exploring the options for the place as an arts venue, council is just trying to offload it. And of course, the Fremantle Society saved it twice already, and here we are again as a community having to jump up and down and get activated quickly to do what the council should be doing, that is promoting it as an arts venue. And you might remember years ago that the CEO was actually instructed to find a performing arts space in Freo, and he had no money, but he did end up spending $500,000 of ratepayer money on officer time and whatever, going around Freo looking for a site for a large performing arts centre, a $20 million or $40 million box, which he had none of the money for, but he was hoping the government would sort of find it. And so the emphasis, instead of looking at existing facilities and doing them up, council went off on this tangent for years to find a place for a big box. And they tried the Italian club site, which upset the Italians. They ended up putting it on Victoria Quay, which totally upset Fremantle Ports. But the point is they didn't have the money, and the idea was just as dumb as the film studio on Victoria Quay. So the point is it distracted everybody for years. And here we are years later with the Victoria Hall and the Town Hall, which should go together as complementary facilities. Neither of them have been looked after by council. Now, we got council to buy it in 2001. they raided the Heritage Fund, which they got rid of since.
680,000.
And so they bought it then, and they did spend a lot of money on it, but now it's sort of deteriorating again.
I think they spent 2 million.
Well, they did indeed. There was a lot of money went into it.
3 million being spent.
And it is a wonderful environment inside. And I feel very sorry for Renato Fabretti, who's the current lessee of the place, that he's got Kate Walsh coming down, he's got all these shows he wants to do, and there's basically no support from council. And the arts community seems to be asleep at the wheel. But you would think that, and this is what the Fremantle Society has suggested, that the council should do a little brochure, do a sort of a 6-page report on the Town Hall and Victoria Hall, and go to Simone McGurk, who hasn't done much recently, and get her to arrange for the Arts Minister and the Heritage Minister, who are the same person, to come down to Fremantle, walk through the Town Hall, which council hasn't spent money on the interior since the America's Cup. So the interior is a stunning, absolutely glorious 1887 interior. And it needs millions of dollars because the beautiful paintwork has deteriorated. The place doesn't function as a proper venue. They haven't got the proper lighting. They haven't got the proper heating. They haven't got the proper catering facilities. So there's a lot of money that actually needs to go into that. And Victoria Hall was always supposed to be the overflow, so that if the Town Hall was too busy and full, then Victoria Hall would capture some of the weddings or the various events and so on. But the point is, the two are glorious assets. And if the state government can find 150 million for the Perth Concert Hall, which is a modern building from the 70s, if they can find 150 million for that, why can't we get help to do up the Town Hall and Victoria Hall together as two absolutely stellar attractions? So we're very upset that they've taken the easy way out. They won't even do a report. They won't even get the minister down. They won't even do any lobbying. They just say, oh, let's sell it. And the danger is, of course, that anybody who wants to buy it will probably want to do what the previous guy wanted to do, rather. They just stick apartments out the back, or we've got to be able to make some money, so start building apartments out the back, or some crazy idea which would totally mess up the integrity of the site.
But why do you think, John, they have that attitude? I mean, at the end of the day, it starts with Mayor Fitzharding. She has a leadership role. She has a role to use her, as she has often said, her political capital. After all, she's a Labor mayor. Why do you think she is not listening to herself? You've got the Fremantle Society's got 50 years of experience, great stunning successes in the past. Why do you think she will not represent Fremantle, the historical part of Fremantle?
Well, I suppose it goes back to the fact that the council seems to want Fremantle to be a modern city, and they want to make things as easy as possible for the developers, and they have thrown heritage out the window altogether. All the heritage funds, all the heritage committees, all the heritage awards, all of those things have gone out the window. And so there is very little money being spent on heritage. They see it as an impediment instead of an asset. And you would think that something like Victoria Hall, which is with this glorious architecture and so on, would be regarded as an asset, not a liability.
But you know how easy it is to build a heritage fund? If you put $2 or $1 on your parking, $1 into the heritage funds would be millions a year. If you put a fee to the developers, because I believe that developers who want to do modern buildings, I think there is room for it. However, we still need to look after our heritage, so everybody has a stake in doing that. We will get millions.
And the visitors as well. They would be happy to pay $1.
Correct.
Well, there was a heritage fund which was 1.25% of council rates. Yeah. It automatically went into this heritage fund. That's how council had the money to buy Victoria Hall on the spot, because they raided that fund. But it was supposed to be a revolving fund where you buy something, sell it, and do it up and sell it. In the case of Victoria Hall, it's a slightly different sort of asset. And the government, people perhaps don't remember that Colin Barnett set up a revolving fund for heritage when he came to Fremantle and looked at the Waters cottages and set up a revolving fund. And he put in 2 or 3 million, did the Waters cottages up, sold them. There's 8 million profit in that fund sitting there, which hasn't been touched. And so yet, that's, we're trying to find out where that is. So revolving heritage funds, something council used to have and got rid of, and the state government's got one, but it's not talking about it.
Sorry, John, that $8 million, is that in the coffers of Fremantle City?
No,
state government.
No, it's the state government revolving fund.
Okay.
And we're trying to find out where that money is, and perhaps the government might buy one of our assets and then do what we should be doing, that is buying assets, doing them up and then putting them back on the market. But yes, I mean, heritage is key to our soul and our future, and don't forget rates have gone up enormously now to pay for maintenance and so on, and they went up enormously in 2010. They went up 10.4%. The whole purpose of that was to give money every single year for the maintenance of the heritage assets and of council-owned properties.
It's also bringing visitors to Fremantle heritage.
Well, that's a selling point, and it should be a selling point. But you know, I work on ships promoting Fremantle, giving lectures, and I mean, what do you tell people? Don't look at the filthy streets. Don't fall over on the crappy pavements, but do look up now and again, and there's still some lovely stuff there, but it's not being looked after or promoted.
Haven't you recently done a trip on the cruise ships, and about 3,000 people alighted in Fremantle? How many of them, what was waiting for them?
Well, the ships have been cancelling their tours, unfortunately. I don't think there's much to offer. Council, every time a cruise ship comes in, they offer one thing, that is an Aboriginal smoking ceremony in King Square, but they don't offer anything else. It's the same thing every ship time. Every time a ship comes, it's an Aboriginal bit of history, but there's no focus on our colonial history. As the best preserved 19th century port town in the world, apparently.
That's right.
That doesn't seem to matter at all. So, yes, we got cruise seasons on, and a lot of people should be wandering around and getting the stories and hearing the stories.
Well, certainly that bridge, I mean, we can touch on that just briefly in Beach Street, that was shut down 18 months ago. The overpass. The overpass, sorry. Overpass. And it just killed the east end of those businesses. And that used to provide a very quick walking route over the bridge and into the city. And of course, they closed that. No good reason that's been demonstrated. And once again, did the city lobby to open it up so that our local businesses could flourish? Not at all. It's still closed.
Yes.
But you could have a cat bus
That's closed.
When the tourists come in, it would be very easy
Council
to
killed
get the cat bus to go down there and come up here.
So on the crossing, on the bridge crossing, from my last meeting, the Port Authority has expressed interest, and they are prepared to put some effort into getting it up and running, and they are dealing with the relevant government departments to see who's going to do it. So they have taken a positive interest, and they've sort of changed, I think, their tact from what they were mid last year. So they see why it should work. They just need to work with the other relevant departments, because it also is hung over public transport. So there's probably a few different boxes to tick to get work done, and also then who will take responsibility and maintain it, because we know Fremantle can't maintain the roads. There's not much chance of them maintaining our overpass. And let's hope the Port Authority takes it on, because they've proven that they can maintain things.
You would think, though, that the council and the state government would work together to actually include a bus service that actually every 15 minutes that would go down there when the cruise ships are in. That wouldn't take very much. I mean, you've got the depot down there, you know.
But if you had a look when we lost our cat bus and how Transperth took to be able to make those changes in. It doesn't replace the cat bus. It's a consolation prize. And I know that there are some people that said, oh, well, we love it because we go into Fremantle and 532 is a great service. Well, it's only a consolation prize. Marine Terrace, it's not serviced. And it's not the cat bus. You've got to understand that we had about $800,000 a year from the state, which we lost forever. We will never get that money back. We only paid a very small portion and we couldn't manage even that.
Well, in Newcastle, they have light rail that goes from the city to the beach.
Well, there you go.
And for visitors, you should make it as easy as possible. They seem to understand that all over the world, when you have visitors wanting to come to visit your city, you've got a gold mine, you're sitting on a gold mine.
Don't forget, we used to have a train service from Fremantle Station all the way down along South Beach, and
That's right.
there was crossings that were put in there. That was for people to get off and on.
When I was on that light rail in December in Newcastle, most of the people were either tourists or teenagers or people in their 20s. So, they want to have access.
Yeah, I think that was transport. A travesty. It really is a travesty.
Well, you can see the parking issue that council created because they wouldn't do anything with the rubbish tip where we had an opportunity to turn it into a car park. They then started using the oval, and the oval now at South Beach is in such poor state. Now they're having to drive all the cars out again, which is only going to flood it back into the residential areas. So the residents again will pay for another lot of bad decisions by council.
Well, you wouldn't have a parking issue on South Beach if you had transport going down there.
Exactly.
Well, we had it. It was called a cat bus.
Thank you for tuning into Freo Doctor Uncensored. If you like this podcast, give us your feedback in the comments and like and share for more awesome content. Catch you in the next episode.